Millions of people are grinding through endless hours, convinced that their financial struggles stem from external forces completely beyond their control. They blame economic downturns, stagnant wages, their demanding boss who refuses that long overdue raise, or simply bad luck that seems to shadow their every financial decision. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. Has this ever happened to you? You've pushed yourself harder than ever before, working overtime shifts, cutting every possible expense down to the bone, following every budgeting strategy and investment tip you could find. Yet somehow, you're still trapped in that exhausting cycle of living paycheck to paycheck, watching abundance feel like some distant dream reserved exclusively for other people. You've done everything the financial experts told you to do, but your bank account tells a completely different story. Here's what might completely revolutionize how you think about money forever. Your financial reality has absolutely nothing to do with the stock market's performance, your job title, the economy's current state, or even how many hours you sacrifice each week. What you're about to discover might surprise you, but every single dollar that flows into or away from your life is actually controlled by something far more powerful than any earthly institution or economic system. It's controlled by spiritual law. These aren't the conventional financial principles you learned in school or read about in mainstream money magazines. These are invisible frequencies that operate completely independently of worldly circumstances, responding not to market fluctuations or government policies, but to your personal alignment with universal abundance principles that have governed wealth creation since the very beginning of time. Think about this for just a moment. Why do some people seem to effortlessly magnetize financial opportunities, while others, equally intelligent and hardworking, struggle their entire lives just to stay afloat? Why do lottery winners often find themselves broke again within just a few short years, while others can lose everything and rebuild their fortunes seemingly overnight with almost supernatural speed? The answer lies in understanding that money is not random, not political, and certainly not personal. Money is completely obedient to spiritual law. If you're currently experiencing financial stress, constant limitation, or that persistent feeling of never having quite enough, I want you to consider a radical possibility that could change everything. You're not unlucky. You're not cursed by some cosmic force, and you haven't been forgotten by the universe. Instead, you're simply out of alignment with the divine frequencies that govern abundance flow. This misalignment creates a spiritual disconnection from what is actually your natural birthright, a life of effortless prosperity and financial freedom. Stay with me until the end, because what I'm about to reveal will completely transform not just how you think about money, but how money responds to you. There's a hidden spiritual code that governs every financial transaction in your life, and once you understand how to crack this code, if you found value in understanding these spiritual laws of money, I'd love to have you subscribe to the channel. There's so much more to discover about how universal principles create real-world abundance, and I want to continue guiding you deeper into this transformation. Most people spend their entire lives trying to fix their money problems by changing external circumstances. They chase better jobs, move to different cities, learn new skills, or follow the latest investment strategies that promise overnight wealth. But what if I told you that the real issue isn't out there in the world at all? What if your financial reality is simply mirroring back to you the exact frequency you're unconsciously broadcasting every single day through your thoughts, words, and deepest beliefs about what you deserve? This is where the transformation becomes absolutely mind-blowing. Behind the scenes of your daily life, there's an invisible realm of spiritual vibration that's actively creating your money experiences. Every thought you think about finances, every word you speak about your situation, every belief you hold about abundance or lack is literally programming the universe to deliver matching circumstances back to you. Think about your own journey with money for a moment. You've probably noticed people who seem to effortlessly attract opportunities while others grind themselves into complete exhaustion with very little to show for it. The difference isn't talent, education, or even luck. It's the energetic frequency they're broadcasting into the universe every single moment. When your internal frequency aligns with prosperity consciousness, money flows naturally toward you like water flowing downhill. But when it's misaligned with scarcity programming, you can work 24 hours a day and still struggle financially. This is exactly why some entrepreneurs build million-dollar businesses, while others with identical strategies fail repeatedly. The uncomfortable truth that changes everything is this: you cannot outwork spiritual misalignment. No amount of hustling, grinding, or pushing harder can compensate for contradictory beliefs running in the background of your subconscious mind. It's like trying to drive forward with the parking brake engaged. The harder you press the accelerator, the more internal resistance you create. The hidden truth behind why so many intelligent, hardworking people remain trapped in financial mediocrity becomes crystal clear when you understand that money responds to vibration, not effort. Your bank account isn't reflecting your work ethic or your intelligence. It's reflecting your spiritual frequency. The revelations within this understanding completely shift how you approach wealth building. Instead of chasing money through force and struggle, you begin attracting it through alignment and flow. Instead of feeling powerless against economic circumstances, you realize you hold the remote control to your financial experience through your vibrational choices. Now, I want to go even deeper into this hidden truth that completely revolutionizes how we understand wealth creation. The most profound revelation behind financial transformation isn't about working harder or finding better opportunities. It's about recognizing that you are essentially operating as a spiritual bank every single day, whether you realize it or not. Write in the comments, "This makes sense to me," if you're starting to see how your internal frequency might be creating your external financial reality. Every word that comes out of your mouth functions as either a deposit or a withdrawal in your energetic account with the universe. Every thought you entertain generates interest, either positive or negative, that compounds over time and directly impacts your financial reality. Think about the conversations you've had just this week. When you said, "I can't afford that," you made a withdrawal. When you complained about being broke, another withdrawal. When you joked about your financial struggles or spoke about money with fear and anxiety, you were essentially telling the universe to deduct funds from your spiritual account. But here's the fascinating part that changes everything. When you speak about abundance, express genuine gratitude for what you have, or declare your financial goals with unwavering confidence, you're making substantial deposits that accumulate spiritual interest. This hidden mechanism operates behind the scenes of your daily life, silently recording every financial thought and translating it into your lived experience with mathematical precision. Most people unknowingly bankrupt themselves spiritually through careless speech and negative thinking patterns, then wonder why their physical bank account reflects the same emptiness. The transformation happens when you realize that money doesn't care how many hours you work or how hard you try. Money responds to the vibrational signal you're broadcasting, and that signal is created through your consistent thoughts, words, and beliefs. This is why some people can work 80 hours a week and still struggle financially, while others seem to attract opportunities effortlessly. The difference isn't in their work ethic or their strategies. It's in their internal frequency. When someone aligns their energy with abundance consciousness, money begins flowing toward them with the same inevitability that iron filings move toward a magnet. The BIT's journey most people are on is completely backwards. They're trying to change their external circumstances to feel better internally, but spiritual law works in the opposite direction. You must change your internal frequency first, and then external circumstances will rearrange themselves to match your new vibration. Behind the scenes of every financial breakthrough is this same principle operating. Someone stopped trying to force outcomes through willpower and intense effort and started focusing on achieving internal alignment first. They discovered that clarity creates more results than confusion, and that aligned energy attracts opportunities that scattered energy could never reach. Now, this brings us to a revelation that most people never discover in their entire lifetime, something that explains why traditional financial advice often fails, while spiritual principles consistently produce results for those who understand how to apply them correctly. Write in the comments, "I'm ready for alignment." If you're beginning to see how this spiritual framework could completely transform your relationship with money, there are precise spiritual codes that function with mathematical accuracy, and most people will never discover them because they're too busy chasing money through conventional strategies that actually work against spiritual abundance. They're caught in an endless cycle of panic and striving, applying external tactics while remaining completely locked out of the inner sanctuary where true wealth is generated. Watch people around you, and you'll see this pattern everywhere. They're following the latest investment trends, switching careers hoping for better pay, cutting expenses to the bone, or starting side hustles that exhaust them. Behind the scenes, they're operating from fear, scarcity, and desperation, the exact frequencies that repel abundance. It's like trying to tune into a radio station while broadcasting static on the same frequency. The hidden truth that changes everything is understanding that money has no moral character whatsoever. It's neither good nor evil, virtuous nor corrupt. Money is completely neutral. It simply responds obediently to whatever vibrational frequency you emit, serving whoever commands it through proper spiritual alignment, regardless of their background, education, or even their perceived worthiness. If these 7 divine laws resonated with something deep inside you, if you felt that shift in understanding about how money really works, a like on this video lets me know this message landed where it needed to. It creates a connection that helps me continue bringing you this level of content. This revelation dismantles so many limiting beliefs that keep people trapped in financial mediocrity. You don't need to be more deserving, more educated, or more worthy to attract abundance. You don't need to sacrifice your values or compromise your integrity. Money doesn't judge your past decisions or current circumstances. It only recognizes frequency. Think about this transformation in perspective for a moment. Money flows to people with complicated histories and those with perfect moral records alike. The determining factor isn't character assessment, it's vibrational alignment. Money serves whoever speaks its language fluently through consistent spiritual frequency. This understanding completely transforms your relationship with wealth because it removes all the emotional baggage and moral confusion that clouds most people's financial decisions. You stop wondering if you deserve abundance and start focusing on becoming vibrationally aligned with it. You stop judging wealthy people or creating stories about why money avoids you, and you start operating the precise spiritual mechanics that govern financial flow. The journey becomes surprisingly straightforward once you realize you're not competing for limited resources or trying to prove your worthiness to some cosmic judge. You're simply learning to broadcast the correct frequency that money recognizes and responds to automatically. Now this brings us to an understanding that revolutionizes everything you thought you knew about financial flow, revealing money as something far more responsive and intelligent than most people ever imagine. Write in the comments, money is neutral, if this perspective is starting to reshape how you think about wealth and abundance. Money is essentially spirit in motion, spiritual energy that has taken physical form and responds directly to the orders of those who stand in truth and proper alignment. It's not emotional, it's not personal, and it doesn't get offended or play favorites. Money operates as a neutral force that follows spiritual laws with the same mathematical precision as physics or chemistry. Instead of seeing money as something external that you need to chase, capture, or convince to come to you, you begin recognizing it as responsive energy that's simply waiting for clear, consistent direction from someone who understands how to communicate in its language. The transformation in perspective is profound because most people have been speaking to money in a language it doesn't understand. The hidden truth behind why so many people struggle financially becomes crystal clear when you understand that the universal intelligence governing abundance operates with extraordinary precision. This divine mind that orchestrates all financial flow will not release overflow into contradictory or confused vibrational states. It waits patiently, sometimes for years or even decades, for your internal frequency to match divine alignment before releasing financial supply into your experience. This explains why desperate people rarely attract abundance, why anxious entrepreneurs often sabotage their own success, and why those who most need money frequently repel it. The universe isn't being cruel or withholding. It's simply following its own perfect logic. Confusion creates confusion. Desperation attracts more reasons to be desperate, and scattered energy produces scattered results. The impact of this revelation changes your entire approach to wealth creation. Instead of trying to force outcomes through willpower and intense effort, you begin focusing on achieving internal clarity and alignment first. Instead of wondering why your financial prayers seem unanswered, you start examining whether your vibrational signal is clear enough for the universe to safely respond. The journey becomes about achieving coherence between your conscious desires and your subconscious programming, between what you say you want and what you actually expect to receive. When this alignment happens, money begins flowing, not because you've worked harder or found better strategies, but because you finally created the internal conditions that allow divine supply to move through you safely. Behind the scenes of every financial breakthrough is this same principle, operating. Someone achieved vibrational clarity, and the universe responded with mathematical precision to their aligned frequency. Now, this understanding leads us to one of the most counterintuitive revelations about wealth creation that completely dismantles conventional thinking about who deserves financial success. Write in the comments, clarity over confusion, if you're beginning to see how your internal state directly impacts your external financial reality. True abundance doesn't flow to the cleverest people, the most educated, or even the most deserving. It flows to the obedient. Wealth is revealed to those who consistently align with divine spiritual principles through daily, exact, and unapologetic adherence to these universal laws, regardless of their background or intellectual capacity. You've probably witnessed this phenomenon without realizing it. The brilliant MBA graduate struggling with debt, while the high school dropout builds a fortune. The kind-hearted social worker, barely making ends meet, while someone with questionable ethics enjoys abundant prosperity. The determining factor isn't intelligence, education, or moral character. It's spiritual obedience to the laws that govern financial flow. This transformation in understanding removes the frustration and confusion that keeps most people trapped in financial limitation. You stop wondering why life seems unfair, or why your good intentions don't translate into material abundance. Instead, you begin focusing on the precise spiritual mechanics that actually control wealth distribution in the universe. Behind the scenes of every sustained fortune is this same principle operating. Someone discovered the divine laws governing abundance and chose daily obedience over occasional compliance. They understood that spiritual principles work through consistency, not intensity, and that alignment is a practice, not a one-time decision. The hidden truth becomes even more powerful when you realize that divine will actually supports your financial prosperity, not your lack. The biblical blueprint reveals that prosperity is part of your divine design, not something you need to feel guilty about pursuing. The universe doesn't want you broke, struggling, or sacrificing. It wants you prosperous as a reflection of your soul's expansion and spiritual development. The journey toward financial transformation becomes a spiritual practice of daily alignment rather than a desperate chase for external solutions. You begin treating wealth creation as sacred work, approaching these divine laws with the same reverence and consistency you would any spiritual discipline. This understanding completely dismantles one of the most destructive beliefs embedded in our culture, the false notion that poverty is somehow pious, or that struggling financially makes you more spiritual. This couldn't be further from the truth. Now, I want to reveal something that will completely transform how you approach every conversation, every internal dialogue, and every casual comment you make throughout your day, because your words are literally creating your financial reality. Write in the comments, divine obedience, if you're ready to approach wealth building as a spiritual practice rather than a worldly struggle. The first divine law that will fundamentally transform your relationship with money operates on a principle that most people never grasp. Every single word you speak creates a spiritual mold into which divine substance is automatically poured. Your words aren't just sounds that disappear into the air, they're creative forces that literally shape the substance of your life experience. When you speak from fear, doubt, or limitation, you're creating scarcity molds that the universe fills with matching experiences. When you speak from faith, expectation, and abundance, you're creating supply molds that attract prosperity into your reality. The hidden truth behind this process is that the spiritual world operates with recording precision. It listens constantly to every word you speak and multiplies what it hears without questioning the wisdom, truth, or consequences of your statements. The universe doesn't filter your words through logic or protect you from poor choices. It simply responds to your vibrational instruction with mathematical accuracy. This means when you casually say, "I'm always behind on my bills," you're giving the universe a direct order to create more situations where you're behind. When you joke, "I'm so broke," you're programming your reality for continued financial lack. This kind of content, where we dive deep into the spiritual mechanics behind financial flow, is what I'm passionate about sharing. If you're ready to explore more of these hidden truths that actually work, hit that subscribe button and join our community of conscious wealth builders. But here's where the transformation happens. When you consciously declare, "I'm abundantly provided for," you're literally molding your future experiences around that frequency. The impact of understanding this law changes everything because you realize your mouth isn't just for communication. It's your primary tool for reality creation. Your mouth was never designed to function as a thermometer that simply reports current conditions. It's meant to operate as a creative instrument that actively shapes and rewrites your reality with every sentence you speak. Most people spend their lives echoing their bank account balance instead of authoring their financial future through conscious word choice. The transformation happens when you realize that until your speech becomes sacred and intentional, your money cannot become stable. There's a direct, unbreakable connection between conscious speaking and financial stability. According to spiritual law, your words either stabilize or destabilize your financial flow based on their vibrational frequency and creative power. Now, as powerful as conscious speech is for transforming your financial reality, there's a second divine law that works in perfect harmony with your words to create unstoppable abundance flow. Write in the comments, "My words create my world," if you're ready to transform your relationship with language and begin speaking your abundance into existence. The law of circulation reveals that money is meant to move, flow, and circulate, never to be gripped, hoarded, or held in fear. Money is literally spirit in motion, and like all spiritual energy, it expands when released in faith and contracts when held in fear, perfectly honoring whatever vibration you emit around it. Most people treat money like a precious resource they need to protect and preserve, clutching it tightly out of fear that there won't be enough. But this approach actually works against the very nature of money itself. Spiritual energy cannot multiply in stagnation. It requires movement, flow, and circulation to expand and return to you, amplified. The hidden truth behind why some people effortlessly attract money while others struggle to keep it is found in their relationship with circulation. Those who understand this law release money with joy, confidence, and expectation of return. They give, invest, and spend from a place of abundance, knowing that circulation creates more circulation. But those who operate from scarcity grip every dollar, second-guess every expenditure, and unconsciously teach the universe that they don't trust it to provide. When you hold money in fear or hoard it out of anxiety about the future, you're essentially sending a vibrational message to the universe that you don't trust it to return your investment. You're programming scarcity into your experience by treating abundance like a finite resource that must be conserved rather than a flowing river that must be directed. Behind the scenes of every financial breakthrough is someone who learned to release money with the same confidence they have in breathing, knowing that what goes out will naturally return, usually multiplied. The impact of understanding circulation completely changes your relationship with spending, giving, and investing, because you stop operating from fear of loss and start operating from expectation of return. The journey toward mastering circulation requires rewiring deep survival instincts that tell you to hoard and protect. But divine law cannot multiply abundance in an atmosphere of suspicion, anxiety, or tight-fisted control. It requires flow, movement, and the kind of confidence that comes from understanding money as cooperative spiritual energy rather than competitive material resource. Now, this understanding takes us deeper into the mechanics of conscious circulation because it's not enough to simply release money with good intentions. Write in the comments, "I trust the flow," if you're ready to release the fear-based grip on money and start circulating with confidence and expectation. Every dollar you release should be accompanied by spoken declaration of its return. This single practice transforms ordinary spending into spiritual transaction that commands multiplication and activates the circulation loop with divine precision. Most people release money silently, hoping for the best, but not actively directing its return. They pay bills, make investments, or give gifts without ever speaking over the transaction or declaring their expectation of abundance flowing back to them. But when you add conscious declaration to every financial release, you're essentially programming the universe with specific instructions about how that energy should multiply and return to your experience. The transformation happens when you realize that tithing, gifting, and investing are not merely material decisions about moving money from one account to another. They're spiritual transactions that either expand or contract your abundance pipeline based on the frequency and declaration you bring to them. Think about this shift in perspective. Instead of grimacing when you pay bills, you begin declaring, "This payment activates my supply channels." Instead of reluctantly giving gifts, you joyfully proclaim, "What I release returns to me multiplied." Instead of nervously making investments, you confidently affirm, "This seed produces abundant harvest in perfect timing." The hidden truth behind why some people experience miraculous returns on their giving while others feel depleted is found in this practice of conscious declaration. Behind the scenes of every financial miracle is someone who learned to speak over every transaction, turning routine money movements into powerful spiritual activations that command the universe's cooperation. Your outer world reflects your inner condition. When your soul begins to prosper through spoken word, obedience to divine principles, and genuine expectation of good, money, and opportunities begin responding to you with the same natural inevitability that waves respond to the gravitational pull of the moon. This is where the real transformation happens. Not through grinding harder or applying more external strategies, but through cultivating internal prosperity first. Your soul's expansion creates the energetic foundation that draws material abundance effortlessly into your experience. It's not about deserving more money. It's about becoming the kind of person whose inner richness naturally magnetizes outer wealth. Now, the first two laws create the foundation for abundance flow. But there's a third divine law that bridges the gap between spiritual principle and physical manifestation in the most profound way. Write in the comments, "I declare abundance," if you're ready to transform every financial transaction into a conscious spiritual activation through spoken word. The law of assumption requires that you walk, speak, breathe, and expect as if your financial demonstration is already complete. Because in divine mind, it already is. What delays the visible manifestation is not divine timing or external circumstances. It's your own refusal to step into the feeling of completion. This transformation in approach challenges everything most people believe about manifestation because it requires you to live from the end result rather than working toward it. Most people operate from a vibration of striving, hoping, and waiting for their abundance to arrive. But this very frequency of expectation actually delays what you're trying to create because you cannot manifest wealth while vibrating in a state of waiting or hoping. The hidden truth behind instantaneous financial breakthroughs is that someone collapsed the timeline and assumed the frequency of fulfillment now, living as if their supply was already released into their experience. They stopped asking, "When will my money come?" and started operating from, "My abundance is here now." They quit rehearsing lack through anxious waiting and began embodying wealth through confident assumption. Think about this shift in your own experience. When you truly assume something is already yours, you stop desperately seeking it. When you know your paycheck is coming, you don't panic about money. When you're certain about an outcome, you naturally relax into its reality. The law of assumption works the same way, but it requires you to step into that certainty before seeing physical evidence. This practice of assumption isn't wishful thinking or self-deception. It's spiritual rehearsal that trains your body, breath, and cells to radiate the condition you command rather than the condition you currently experience. When you consistently assume wealth, you're literally reprogramming your nervous system, your posture, your decision-making patterns, and your energetic signature to match abundance rather than lack. When you genuinely feel wealthy, your body chemistry changes, your stress hormones decrease, your confidence increases, and you naturally begin making choices that wealthy people make. Your brain starts recognizing opportunities that were always there but invisible to your scarcity-focused awareness. This isn't positive thinking. It's biological and energetic reprogramming through conscious assumption. The hidden truth behind why assumption works so powerfully is that your subconscious mind cannot distinguish between vividly imagined experiences and actual experiences. Now this brings us to a fourth divine law that amplifies everything we've discussed so far through a practice that most people completely misunderstand. Write in the comments, "It is already done," if you're ready to step into the frequency of financial completion rather than continuing to wait for abundance to arrive. The law of tithing with word reveals that tithing is not religious obligation, guilt-driven duty, or superstitious ritual. It's spiritual alignment that activates abundant flow when done with conscious declaration and specific intention. Most people approach giving from exactly the wrong frequency. They give money and hope for the best, treating tithing like a cosmic lottery ticket where they're not sure if anything will come back. But the few who understand this law give money and command return through spoken word, transforming ordinary giving into powerful spiritual activation that the universe must respond to. Behind the scenes of every person who experiences miraculous returns on their giving is someone who learned to tithe with word, not just with money. They don't give silently and hope. They give boldly and declare. They don't tithe from fear of consequence, but from confidence in cosmic law. This understanding takes tithing to its deepest spiritual level, because true tithing is not about giving to individuals, organizations, or even causes you believe in. It's about giving to spiritual principle itself, acknowledging that spirit is your ultimate source rather than any person, job, or institution. When you tithe from this perspective, you're not trying to support someone else's work. You're honoring the universal law that governs all supply and circulation. The transformation happens when you realize that authentic tithing is done from covenant rather than emotion. It's not about feeling moved by someone's story, guilted into giving, or hoping to earn favor through generosity. It's about entering into spiritual contract with the law of circulation itself, sealing your participation in divine flow through conscious giving that acknowledges the source of all abundance. Think about this shift in your own giving patterns. When you give to principle rather than personality, you're no longer dependent on how others use your gift or whether they appreciate your generosity. You're not giving to get emotional satisfaction or recognition. You're giving to activate cosmic law that must respond regardless of human variables or external circumstances. But here's where most people miss the full power of this practice. You must never give in silence again. Every act of generosity must be accompanied by spoken declaration that waters the seed you're planting with your voice. Most people give money and walk away, treating their generosity like a gamble where they hope something good might happen. Now, the first 4 laws create incredible momentum toward abundance, but there's a 5th divine law that determines whether all your efforts will succeed or sabotage themselves through internal contradiction. Write in the comments, "I tithe with declaration," if you're ready to transform your giving from hopeful gesture into powerful spiritual command that activates guaranteed return. The law of agreement reveals that you cannot say one thing and believe another without creating vibrational chaos that blocks your manifestation. Agreement means sacred harmony between what you say, what you believe, and what you genuinely expect to happen in your experience. Most people unknowingly violate this law constantly, creating internal warfare that neutralizes their abundance efforts. They affirm wealth in the morning, but worry about bills at night. They declare prosperity while making jokes about being broke. They speak abundance but expect struggle. This contradiction creates scrambled signals that confuse the universe and delay financial breakthrough indefinitely. The transformation happens when you realize that true agreement isn't just about positive thinking. It's about achieving complete vibrational coherence between your conscious desires and your subconscious programming. When your inner and outer word finally align, you become magnetic to matching abundance because there's no internal resistance disrupting your signal. Think about this challenge in your own experience. How often do you catch yourself speaking abundance while feeling scarcity? How frequently do you affirm prosperity while your deeper beliefs whisper doubts about your worthiness or capability? The hidden truth behind why some people manifest quickly while others struggle for years is found in this internal agreement between all levels of their being. But here's where this gets really powerful. You must consciously burn your contracts with scarcity. Over the years, you've made silent agreements with lack through family patterns that normalized struggle, cultural conditioning that romanticized poverty, and casual conversations that reinforced limitation. These unconscious contracts are still operating in your subconscious, sabotaging your conscious abundance efforts. The journey toward complete agreement requires actively dissolving these old contracts and consciously signing new ones that agree only with wealth, prosperity, and divine supply. Behind the scenes of every sustained financial transformation is someone who did this inner work of contract revision, refusing to honor agreements with lack that were never their true choice. The impact of achieving internal agreement is immediate because your entire being begins broadcasting the same frequency. Your words, thoughts, emotions, and expectations all begin pulling in the same direction rather than working against each other. The revelations that come through this practice extend far beyond money because you discover how internal agreement affects every area of manifestation in your life. Now this brings us to what might be the most foundational divine law of all, because even if you master every other principle, your results will always be limited by this sixth law. Write in the comments, "I choose new agreements," if you're ready to dissolve old contracts with lack and sign fresh agreements that align completely with abundance. The law of identity reveals that you can only receive what your identity can hold and attract what your subconscious genuinely believes you're worthy of experiencing. If you see yourself as a struggler, someone who's bad with money, or a person who never gets ahead, the universe has no choice but to mirror that exact limitation back to you. This is where most people hit an invisible ceiling in their financial growth. They might apply abundance techniques, speak positive words, and even experience temporary breakthroughs. But eventually, they return to their original financial condition because their core identity hasn't shifted. Your subconscious mind acts like a thermostat, constantly adjusting your external circumstances to match your internal sense of who you are. The transformation happens when you understand that identity change must precede reality change, not the other way around. Most people wait for external circumstances to shift before they allow themselves to feel wealthy, successful, or abundant. But according to spiritual law, you must replace every old label with new identity statements first. Then reality reshapes itself to match your new self-concept. Think about the labels you've carried about yourself and money. I'm not good with numbers. Money doesn't come easily to me. I'm just not the wealthy type. Rich people are different from me. Every one of these identity statements functions like a spiritual contract that limits what you can receive because your subconscious mind will sabotage any opportunity that conflicts with your established sense of self. The hidden truth behind lasting financial transformation is that someone consciously replaced statements like, "I'm bad with money," with, "I am wealth in motion." They stopped identifying as someone who struggles and started embodying the identity of someone for whom abundance flows naturally. Behind the scenes of every sustained prosperity story is this fundamental identity shift that preceded all external changes. The journey toward identity transformation requires daily repetition of new self-concepts until they feel more natural than the old limiting labels. You must speak your new identity aloud, think from your new identity, and make decisions from your new identity until your subconscious finally accepts this upgraded version of who you are. The impact of this work is profound, because once identity truly changes through conscious repetition, reality must follow according to spiritual law. Now, all 6 laws we've explored create incredible potential for financial transformation. But there's a 7th and final divine law that determines whether you'll actually experience lasting change or simply remain an educated observer of spiritual principles. Write in the comments, "I am wealth in motion," if you're ready to replace old financial identity labels with new abundant statements that reshape your entire reality. The law of obedience reveals that you cannot command money if you refuse to obey spiritual law consistently. This isn't about achieving perfection or never making mistakes. It's about developing the kind of daily, intentional, sacred repetition that reshapes your entire reality through rhythm. Most people approach spiritual principles like a buffet, picking and choosing which laws they'll follow based on their mood, convenience, or current circumstances. They practice abundance techniques when they remember, speak consciously when they feel inspired, and circulate money when it seems easy. But divine law doesn't respond to casual application. It responds to consistent obedience that creates new patterns in your subconscious programming. The transformation happens when you realize that spiritual obedience is the bridge between knowing these laws and living their results. Behind the scenes of every sustained financial breakthrough is someone who made the decision to practice these principles daily, regardless of how they felt, what their circumstances looked like, or whether they saw immediate evidence of change. Think about this challenge in your own journey with spiritual principles. How often have you learned powerful concepts only to apply them sporadically when life got busy or doubt crept in? The hidden truth is that rhythm creates results more than intensity ever will. Someone who practices these laws imperfectly but consistently will always outperform someone who applies them perfectly but occasionally. This understanding leads us to a practical framework that can revolutionize your relationship with money in just 7 days. The 7 Days of Covenant Living Challenge requires you to practice all 7 laws daily as your new rhythm, creating a comprehensive, spiritual practice that addresses every aspect of financial manifestation simultaneously. The structure is surprisingly simple, but profoundly effective. Each morning begins with conscious word declaration, speaking your financial reality into existence. Midday involves assumption embodiment, living as if your abundance is already complete. Throughout the day, you practice thought substitution, replacing any scarcity thinking with abundance statements. Evening includes circulation with declaration, releasing money while speaking its return. Finally, you seal each day with expectation practices that anchor your faith in divine provision. The impact of this 7-day intensive creates momentum that most people have never experienced because you're addressing financial transformation from every angle simultaneously, rather than hoping one technique will somehow override years of contradictory programming. Now, I want to show you exactly how to structure these 7 days, so you can begin implementing this spiritual code immediately and start experiencing the financial flow you've been seeking. Write in the comments, "I commit to 7 days," if you're ready to move beyond studying these laws and start living them through consistent daily practice. The beauty of this 7-day framework lies in its precision and simplicity, starting each morning with a command routine that sets your entire day's frequency. The moment you wake, before checking your phone or allowing the world's chaos to infiltrate your consciousness, you begin with the law of the word, declaring, "My voice is the voice of wealth. I speak money into motion." This isn't just reciting words. You're literally programming your subconscious mind and announcing to the universe your financial intentions for the day. Immediately following this declaration, you embody the law of assumption by consciously shifting into living as though your supply is already released. This means making your morning coffee as someone who is financially free, choosing your clothes as someone whose abundance is secured, and planning your day from the mindset of someone whose prosperity is already manifesting. The transformation happens in these seemingly small moments because you're training your nervous system to operate from abundance rather than anxiety. As your day unfolds, the midday alignment practice becomes your spiritual anchor point, especially when the world tries to pull you back into old patterns of thinking. This is where the law of substitution becomes your most powerful tool. The moment you catch yourself thinking thoughts of lack, doubt, fear, or delay, you immediately interrupt that pattern and replace it with, "I am divinely provided for. There is no loss in spirit." Think about how radical this practice actually is. Most people allow hundreds of scarcity thoughts to pass through their minds unchallenged throughout the day, each one reinforcing their financial limitations. But when you become vigilant about thought substitution, you're essentially rewiring your mental patterns in real time, refusing to allow your mind to rehearse lack when you could be rehearsing abundance. The hidden truth behind why this midday practice is so effective is that your subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between repetition that happens during formal meditation and repetition that happens during daily life. Every time you substitute a fear-based thought with an abundance-based declaration, you're making a deposit in your spiritual bank account that accumulates interest throughout the day. Behind the scenes of every financial breakthrough is someone who learned to guard their thoughts as carefully as they guard their physical possessions, understanding that mental discipline creates material results. Now, as the day draws to a close, the evening seal ritual becomes the most powerful moment in your entire spiritual practice, because this is where you activate the law of circulation with absolute intention and divine declaration. Write in the comments, "I guard my thoughts," if you're ready to practice vigilant thought substitution and refuse to allow scarcity thinking to sabotage your abundance efforts. Whether you're tithing to spiritual principle, giving to someone in need, or simply circulating money through normal transactions, you never release a single dollar without speaking over it. This seed is blessed. It returns to me multiplied. It opens doors no man can shut. This practice transforms ordinary money movement into extraordinary spiritual activation because you're programming every financial release with expectation of increase rather than fear of loss. Most people pay bills with resentment, give money with anxiety, or spend with worry about whether they'll have enough. But when you speak blessing over every dollar that leaves your hands, you're essentially commanding the universe to honor your circulation with abundant return. The transformation happens when you realize that this evening declaration isn't just hope or positive thinking. It's spiritual law in action. You're not asking the universe to maybe bless your giving. You're declaring that divine law must respond to your conscious circulation with multiplication. Behind the scenes of every financial miracle is someone who learned to speak over their money with this level of authority and expectation. Following your circulation declarations, you seal the entire day with expectation. Statements that anchor your faith in divine provision. This isn't passive hoping, but active commanding, declaring that your supply is already on its way, that opportunities are already arranging themselves, and that abundance is already flowing toward you through channels you haven't even imagined yet. But here's where this entire 7-day practice culminates in the most powerful spiritual statement you can make about your relationship with money. You seal all your practices with the ultimate declaration of authority. Because I obey divine law, money cannot ignore me. This becomes your spiritual sword, your rhythm, and your reprogramming tool that literally makes the external world bend to match your internal frequency. Think about the profound shift this represents in your relationship with abundance. You're no longer begging the universe for financial breakthrough or wondering if you deserve prosperity. You're declaring that your obedience to spiritual law creates an irresistible, magnetic pull that money must respond to. The hidden truth behind this declaration is that it positions you as a spiritual authority rather than a financial victim. The impact of this complete 7-day immersion rewrites your subconscious programming at the deepest level because you're not just changing your thinking occasionally. You're changing your entire energetic signature through consistent, daily embodiment of these divine frequencies. Now, I want to share something with you that goes beyond just understanding these principles, because knowledge without application remains powerless. And there's a specific way to ensure these 7 days create lasting transformation rather than temporary inspiration. Write in the comments, I command abundance, if you're ready to position yourself as spiritual authority over your financial reality, rather than remaining a victim of circumstances. The revelations that come through identity transformation extend far beyond money, because you discover that every area of your life reflects back your deepest beliefs about who you are and what you deserve to experience. But here's what makes this transformation so challenging for most people. Your current identity wasn't formed through conscious choice. It was programmed through years of family conversations, cultural conditioning, educational systems, and repeated experiences that convinced you this is simply who you are. The journey toward financial freedom requires you to become ruthlessly honest about the identity statements you've been unconsciously repeating. Every time you've said, I'm just not good with money, or people like me don't get wealthy, or I always struggle financially, you've been reinforcing an identity that your subconscious mind treats as unchangeable truth. These aren't casual observations about your circumstances. They're spiritual contracts that your subconscious mind enforces with absolute precision. The transformation begins the moment you recognize that identity is actually a choice, not a fixed characteristic. You can consciously decide to replace I'm always broke with I am a magnet for abundance. You can substitute money is hard for me with money flows to me easily and naturally. But here's the crucial part that most people miss. You cannot simply speak new identity statements a few times and expect decades of programming to disappear. Identity transformation requires what I call spiritual persistence. You must repeat your new identity statements with the same consistency you brush your teeth, understanding that you're literally rewiring neural pathways that have been carved deep through years of repetition. The hidden truth behind lasting change is that your subconscious mind only accepts what you prove through consistent action and repeated declaration. This is where most people give up. They speak abundance identity statements for a few days, don't see immediate external changes, and conclude that the process doesn't work. But identity transformation operates on a different timeline than external circumstances. Your new identity must become more familiar to your subconscious than your old identity before reality begins to shift. This requires weeks or even months of consistent repetition before the tipping point where your new self-concept becomes your default operating system. Behind the scenes of every sustained financial transformation is someone who understood that identity work isn't optional. They recognized that until they became someone who naturally expects abundance, all their external efforts would eventually return them to their original financial condition. The impact of this realization changes everything, because you stop trying to fix your money problems and start becoming the kind of person who doesn't have money problems. The journey toward embodying abundance identity requires treating this work as the most important daily practice in your life, because once your identity truly shifts at the subconscious level, your external world must reorganize itself to match your new internal reality. Now, there's one final element that determines whether everything we've discussed becomes a lasting transformation or simply remains interesting information that fades from memory. Write in the comments, "I choose my identity," if you're ready to take conscious control over who you are rather than accepting the programming from your past as permanent truth. That final element is understanding the difference between intellectual fascination and spiritual commitment. Most people will read about these 7 divine laws, feel inspired by the possibilities, maybe even attempt to apply them for a few days, and then gradually return to their old patterns when life gets busy or doubts creep in. They treat spiritual principles like entertainment rather than the precise operating system that governs all abundance flow, the transformation that creates lasting. Financial change requires what I call sacred stubbornness. This means making the conscious decision that you will practice these laws daily, regardless of your mood, your circumstances, or whether you see immediate evidence of change. Sacred stubbornness means waking up and declaring your abundance identity even when your bank account says otherwise. It means speaking blessings over your money circulation even when paying bills feels painful. It means assuming the frequency of wealth even when external evidence contradicts your declarations. This isn't blind faith or wishful thinking. It's spiritual obedience to laws that operate with the same consistency as gravity or electricity. You don't negotiate with gravity based on your mood or circumstances. You either align with it or face the consequences. The same precision applies to these abundance laws. They work for everyone who works with them consistently, but they cannot work through sporadic application or casual interest. Behind the scenes of every person who experiences sustained financial transformation is someone who made this commitment to daily spiritual obedience. They understood that these laws aren't suggestions they can follow when convenient. They're precise spiritual mechanics that require consistent activation to produce consistent results. The hidden truth that separates those who succeed from those who struggle is this unwavering commitment to practice regardless of external circumstances. The impact of this level of commitment extends far beyond money because you begin experiencing how universal law responds to genuine spiritual persistence. You discover that the universe isn't testing your patience or making you prove your worthiness. It's simply waiting for you to demonstrate through consistent action that you're serious about aligning with abundance rather than just curious about it. The journey toward mastering these laws requires treating them as your new spiritual discipline. Understanding that every day you practice, you're literally rewiring decades of programming that kept you trapped in financial limitation. Every day you skip, you're reinforcing the old patterns that created your current reality. There's no neutral ground in spiritual law. You're either moving toward abundance through consistent alignment or moving away from it through inconsistent application. Now, what I'm about to share with you will determine whether you join the small percentage of people who actually implement these principles or remain part of the majority who admire them from a distance without experiencing their transformative power. Write in the comments, "I commit to consistency," if you're ready to treat these spiritual laws as your daily practice rather than occasional inspiration. The difference between those who experience miraculous financial transformation and those who remain stuck isn't found in their circumstances, their education, or even their starting point. It's found in their willingness to completely surrender their old relationship with money and embrace a radically different approach that most people will never attempt. This surrender isn't passive resignation. It's active engagement with spiritual principles that require you to operate from a completely different frequency than the one that created your current financial reality. The challenge most people face when they first encounter these laws isn't understanding them intellectually. It's overcoming the internal resistance that screams at them to return to familiar patterns when the new approach feels uncomfortable or uncertain. Your ego mind has been trained to equate financial security with controlling, hoarding, and desperately seeking money through conventional means. When you begin operating from trust, flow, and spiritual alignment instead, every survival instinct will try to convince you that you're being reckless or naive. This internal resistance is actually a sign that the transformation is working. Your old programming recognizes that you're installing new software that threatens its control over your financial decisions. The breakthrough happens when you persist through this discomfort, understanding that temporary internal chaos is the price of permanent external change. Behind the scenes of every person who successfully masters these laws is someone who refused to retreat to familiar limitation when the new approach felt foreign or challenging. The journey through this resistance requires what I call spiritual courage. This means continuing to declare abundance when your bank account says otherwise. It means circulating money with faith when every instinct screams at you to hoard. It means assuming wealth when external evidence contradicts your declarations. This isn't foolishness. It's the exact mechanism through which spiritual law transforms physical reality. The hidden truth about implementing these principles is that they work regardless of your current circumstances, your past financial history, or your level of spiritual experience. They respond to consistency and commitment, not perfection or prior knowledge. You don't need to understand every nuance of how they work. You simply need to apply them with the same faithfulness you apply to breathing, trusting that universal law will handle the details of manifestation. But here's what creates the difference between temporary inspiration and lasting transformation. You must approach this 7-day challenge as a complete experiment in living differently, not as an addition to your current routine. For these 7 days, you're essentially agreeing to operate as if these spiritual laws are the only reality that matters, regardless of what your external circumstances or internal fears suggest. Now, there's a specific way to prepare yourself for this experiment that will dramatically increase your chances of experiencing breakthrough results rather than subtle improvements. Write in the comments, "I surrender control," if you're ready to release your old relationship with money and trust spiritual law to orchestrate your financial transformation. That preparation begins with understanding that these 7 days aren't about adding spiritual practices to your existing routine. They're about completely replacing your current financial operating system with one that operates from divine law rather than human limitation. This means for 7 consecutive days, you're choosing to live as if these principles are the only truth that matters about money, regardless of what your past experience or current circumstances suggest. The transformation starts before you even begin day 1. You must make a conscious decision to ignore every piece of conventional financial advice you've ever received during these 7 days. You're temporarily suspending belief in economic predictions, market volatility, job security, and every other external factor that most people use to determine their financial decisions. This isn't permanent denial of reality. It's strategic spiritual focus that allows these laws to operate without interference from contradictory programming. The hidden truth behind why most people fail to experience breakthrough results is that they try to blend spiritual principles with conventional thinking, creating internal contradiction that neutralizes both approaches. But when you commit to operating exclusively from these 7 laws for a complete week, you create what I call a spiritual laboratory, where divine law can demonstrate its power without competing against old programming. Behind the scenes of every miraculous financial transformation is someone who made this kind of radical commitment to trust spiritual law completely, even when it contradicted everything they'd been taught about money. They understood that breakthrough results require breakthrough thinking, and breakthrough thinking requires temporarily suspending the beliefs that created their current limitations. The impact of this complete commitment extends far beyond the 7 days because you're essentially proving to yourself that a different relationship with money is possible. Once you experience money responding to spiritual law rather than economic circumstances, you can never fully return to the old paradigm of financial anxiety and limitation. You've witnessed firsthand that money is obedient to whoever understands its spiritual nature. The journey through these 7 days will challenge every assumption you've ever held about how money works, why some people prosper while others struggle, and what's actually possible when you align with universal abundance principles. Each day will reveal new layers of programming that you didn't even realize were operating in your subconscious, while simultaneously installing new patterns that naturally attract prosperity. But here's what will determine whether these 7 days create lasting change or temporary excitement. You must approach each practice with what I call divine expectancy, understanding that you're not experimenting with techniques, but engaging with living spiritual law that must respond to proper alignment. That crucial element is understanding that completion isn't about perfection. It's about persistence through the inevitable moments when your old programming tries to convince you that this approach is too different, too radical, or too good to be true. The voice that whispers these doubts isn't your wisdom speaking. It's the same limited thinking that created your current financial reality, desperately trying to maintain control over your decisions. The breakthrough happens when you recognize these moments of resistance as confirmation that you're moving in the right direction. Every time you feel uncomfortable with these new patterns, every time your ego suggests returning to familiar limitation, you're actually witnessing the exact mechanism through which transformation occurs. Your willingness to persist through this discomfort is what separates those who experience financial miracles from those who remain trapped in conventional thinking. If you've stayed with me through this entire journey of the 7 divine laws, you're clearly someone who's ready for real transformation, not just surface-level motivation. The fact that you're still here tells me everything I need to know about your commitment to changing your financial reality through spiritual alignment rather than just hoping for lucky breaks.